Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley has over 33 years in the trucking business, moving ag and construction equipment across the country. For more information, go to valleytransinc.com or give Parker a call at 800-657-4910. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast number 244. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. Also, Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. No matter how you buy ag equipment from a dealer, auction, or a private party, AgDirect can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn about your financing options at agdirect.com. Joining today is Tim Whitley, CEO of Team SI, that's probably where you probably recognize Tim at the most, but him and his company have gone out and started a new branch called SIEQ. And Tim, it's always great to have you on the podcast, man, because you bring a lot of great information about what's going out there on the digital world. So, Tim, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm great. Thank you so much. We were just at the Moving Iron Summit together, and we presented a lot of information and accumulated a lot of information from people that I think people are definitely going to want to listen to for year 22. So I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. So 21 brought a whole new, peeled back another layer of the onion of the digital world coming out of COVID. And how that all worked and then where we're at now. But before we jump into all that, Tim, talk about what you're doing with SIEQ and kind of what that is and what's that a spinoff of when you start talking about Team SI.
Yeah, so Team SI is our holding company, basically, and our SIEQ division is all agribusiness. So typically we have done with the equipment world. But now, since we know the customer journey of farmers and business owners that search for CCE and all this stuff, we have all those journeys mapped out with first-party data for the past 11 years, man. I mean, we've been doing it since it wasn't cool, right? And so we decided to finally build a whole new company that's just dedicated to agribusiness. So if you just, if you're listening to this podcast, you have nothing to do with equipment, but you are in selling soil, fertilizer, solar, whatever it is, we have all of that mapped out. And those are the same people that are purchasing products that Team SI has always been after. So that's the big real reason in just diversifying and including more about the farming community, because the reason that I love the agribusiness is because we're actually doing something to help the world and feed the world and clothe the world. And so we just wanted to dedicate more resources to it.
Right on. Very noble venture there that you're going into. So I guess, Tim, as you take a look at what 19 we had, going into COVID, 20 was a whole brave new world that we came into. And then 21 is kind of the story after the story. And I guess as you look at coming into 21, what were some of the biggest takeaways you came from
through that journey through 2020 and the shutdowns and stuff like that cope?
So what was interesting and foretelling a little bit was in 2020, before the world quote unquote shut down on March 13th, in February, late February, we were all at a conference with deer dealers, J-Doug, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was funny is I was on stage and I was talking about the growth of e-com and we needed to be there, et cetera. That was my whole presentation, was on e-commerce. And then March 13th hit, and you have Google Trends that just completely just spiked. I mean, skyrocketed to where even our Google reps, as being a Google Premier partner, were like, we have no idea what's going on. And their algorithm was so messed up to where the automotive world, they actually decreased when the agri world spun up by 23% of search queries. So think about how many people search for agri business, and people, it was a 23% increase overnight on the 13th. Now there's a story to this, and they were searching for agri products. And the thing is, on the automotive side, cost per clicks increased with a decrease of people searching. Agri increased in number of searches, but decreased on cost per click because the algorithm had no idea what the heck to do with it. And because we rely so much on algorithms. I want to make something very clear. There's a lot of people out there that are saying COVID brought the e-commerce and brought this new light to agri. That is not true. It accelerated it. We've been talking about it for 11 years, and I've been watching the patterns. All it did was accelerate it. Now, what I found interesting from FY20 when you're comparing to FY21 is we had another increase in search queries by 21% over 2020 for agri-related stuff. So, for example, if you're searching for a piece of used equipment, it's captured. If you're searching for new equipment, it's captured. But like I was telling Casey at the Moving Iron conference and on different conversations, is what was interesting in 2020, that March to about October, which is usually not your typical timeline for high season, it was very, very high all the way through October. But here was the tricky part, is you had one query, but then you had about 6 pages of in-depth information. So one query and then 6 pages of trying to find the right piece of equipment for them. FY21, it went down to 3. So one query equaled 3. So it's like in 2020, we just educated everyone. And then in 21, what the data was showcasing was people were just not looking that far in depth. Now, there are some cases, as I was telling Casey, was in some of those cases was inventory near me was up 500%. And they were just trying to find the nearest solution to keep them operating, which I found very interesting. And Casey, you and I were talking about, when you were shopping for your exercise machine.
Right. Treadmill. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the content's king. It will continue to stay like that. And it's the same thing we've been preaching forever. It just accelerated everything.
Yep. All right. So now that here we are through 2021, and we've kind of made that transition going into 22. What do you say is the big driving factor? Like you said, they're trying to find the closest thing to where they're at, those kind of things. But what's that big driving factor you think that's going to change in 21 that's going to factor over into 22? Do you think it's going to get even less to where they're going to be going down from 6 to 3? Now they're going to be down to like 1 or 2. Is that something you're anticipating, or do you really fully see that? I always say the second page of a Google search page is a great place to bury a body because nobody looks there. But
yeah.
So when you're talking about that first, getting past those first 5 or 6 ads that are on the Google search page, and then you get to those organic listings down there at the bottom. Is it the ads that are going to be more driving people to look at their product, or is it going to be more that I'm going to go try to find? Because I try to go to the organic thing, and I feel like I'm getting a better amount of information.
Relevant search.
It's not driven towards some flash in the pan trying to catch my attention thing. This is
Yeah.
actually what I'm trying to find. So I guess when you look at those things, what's your thoughts there?
Our forecast for 22, and I keep getting years mixed up because it's like I keep living, I'm still trying to get over 20. But in 22, our forecast is the queries. I don't think we can do another 20% increase year over year. I mean, that's unsustainable growth, right? For the number of search queries in the agri business. And this is per household, right? So it's not just number of random queries, it's unique. And so I don't think we're going to see another 20% above. I do think we'll see a little bit above, probably in the 5 to 12% growth, but not anything significant. Now, the number of pages, I'm still not clarified. I don't know that yet, Casey, because when we're talking to a lot of our dealer partners and manufacturer partners, inventory is on their mind, number one, right? And so it's going to be on a location by location basis. I have a feeling of where the inventory sits and what how the dealers are handling that messaging. So some dealers are doing like call to actions of like only 3 left, hurry up, or just nonchalant, just saying, hey, we have tons of them, just pre-order. So you got different mixes of different messaging, which is going to make that different for each AOR. But I do have a very strong feeling that it's not going to decrease from 3. I really do think it's probably going to be around the 4 to 5 area, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, so inventory, that's a big thing on everybody's mind right now. Not because there's too much inventory, because there's utter lack of inventory. And you had brought up at Moving Iron, some of you worked with some dealers that were doing stuff on their websites as far as, we buy type stuff, we buy whatever, bring your equipment in and we'll buy it from you off on the spot type thing. How has that worked? And what's the reaction to the equipment journey working through that side of the business?
So that thing is, you're kind of testing waters in each AOR. So right. When we've been implementing those things inside of each AOR, I can tell you that your AOR on the West Coast is definitely going to be different than somewhere in the Central Plains, right? So right. Let me give you a quick example. So, and actually in our study that we did in the summit, we asked this, but there were a number of dealers that, just like the automotive side, and you know how much I do in automotive, and I even have ownership in some automotive dealerships, is we had to do a We Buy campaign. That was all we had to do. That's all we could do in the automotive world because we had no inventory. And the only way was to get those people in to sell their vehicle. And so we would purchase that vehicle. Well, so some of that, when we saw a huge win there in the automotive industry, we started to dot the lines in the agri and doing it with a few of our dealers, which did work. And then a few, it didn't work, right? But then we started on the new equipment side of labeling how many units were left at the dealership. And if you do that, yes, it may scare you, but by gosh, we sure did. We drove them, because there's nothing like being said, there's 2 left in stock. Amazon does it all the time. Why do they do that? Because that's a huge call to action to actually do something before that 2 goes to 0. So a lot of our dealers were labeling, hey, only 3 left, only 4 left, et cetera. Email marketing, the SEM ads, all the ads, all set at the same message, because frequency is key in any kind of marketing message. And that's where we were driving heavy results. And then after that, it was all about place your order for next year, which, to be honest, Casey, I was actually very surprised how well that worked. Because, I figured the We Buy, because I saw the customer journey, and I'm a data-driven person. So I always have to have data crumbs to get me to the end result. And I didn't have the data crumbs to see, is the forecast of purchase now, deliver later, is that going to work? Because we had no data crumbs on that. And I was actually surprised how many of our dealers it worked in. Everyone we tried that in, I would say about 85% of it worked, which really surprised me. And I know that's about new equipment, not necessarily about used, but I think it does say something about the industry and about what we're going into with FY22 is that they still have to make a living, Casey. They still have to have their farm up and running, their equipment up and running, right? So what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the point. I think people are missing out on this deal here. We have this, I don't know. There's this thing, you still have to have a planter to plant your crops. You still have to have a tractor to pull your planter. You still have to have a combine to harvest your crop. All those different things that are playing in there. And the one thing about this time frame compared to any other time frame out there is that the overwhelming majority of the machinery out there is older than it's ever been as far as the overall fleet goes. I mean, even older than it was. You'd think like during the 80s, that time frame, there'd be older equipment in use, and it wasn't. This length of time has the oldest fleet out there operating, and there's going to come a point in time when guys are going to start making those decisions to move stuff forward, and I think that's where we're at right now. I mean, with commodity prices on farm income, those kind of things. Now, 22, it's a whole different thing. You start looking at input costs and all that stuff that play into that. There's a big upheaval right now in that. So it'll be interesting to see how 22 shakes out and what that looks like. But you still have to
Casey, on that point about the oldest fleet, right? Mm-hmm. That's interesting to me. And you've told me that before at the summit, but that was always interesting to me because when I was growing up and we had a large ag farm in West Texas, our fleet, I mean, we had some Case IHs that were just pink because they were so old, right?
Right.
And that just amazes me because we thought we had a very old fleet, and of course we had new ones, but then our older fleet was just old. Yeah. So that was really impressive when you told me that at the summit and now, because I just can't imagine older.
Right. And it's just on average, if you look at that, I mean, most guys bought a brand new piece of equipment in 2011, 2012, 2013, something like that, and then haven't done anything with it since then. So they could be operating a 7-year-old combine, which isn't necessarily unheard of, but in a lot of cases, to run a combine for 7 years with the same person running that combine is not on the average, not on the norm. Most combines are about every 3 to 5 years they're kind of swapped around, and that's kind of an average point there. So it's just it's a very unique thing. So, well, let's do this. Let's share your screen and let's talk about what the data was that you came up from the movie.
Man, I was so excited. You actually gave me this idea to capture information at your summit, and I jumped at it. And so I wanted to have a sense in your audience of where people were advertising, where the leads were coming from, where the sales were coming from. And this is used equipment mixed in with probably some new equipment, since your audience was bigger this past season. And so the first question was, which is more expensive as a channel to advertise? And we're actually talking here, the question was for used equipment was, is it your dealer website or is it a third-party website? And so the audience, holistically, about 75% of them said third-party sites is where they advertise on, which is the Tractor Houses, the Fast Lines of the world, etc. And then only about a quarter, 1/4, said your personal dealer website, which was interesting to me. And I think I said this on the stage, is in the automotive world, even with the dealerships I have interest in, we don't do anything with third-party sites because we don't want them to swim in the sea of our competitors. So I think this trend is still going to continue to change, just like it has in automotive. But then I asked, so you heard where you were advertising, but this was interesting. Where do you generate most of your leads? Well, this is when it started to have discrepancies of the answers where it contradicted. So third-party sites was number one, but then your dealer site, instead of it being a quarter, it is now half. So half of the audience said it was coming from the personal website of X dealer.
Right.
And then we did have about, I'm not good with fractions, but let's just say an eighth of people that said walk-ins, which are probably your potential people that are just calling, etc.
Right.
But the discrepancy started to come in and say, okay, well, we're advertising a ton on third-party sites, but the leads shifted to where half of them is your dealer website. So then we asked, where are you generating most of your sales? And this is, again, then more interesting, is that about 5/8, so more than half, said dealer website. And then, but number one was still third-party sites. And then the same as your dealer website, which was about 5/8, was walk-ins. So it kind of surprised me that we're putting all of our eggs when you're talking about advertising on third-party sites. But when you look at the data, if you're doing on your dealer site, if you're getting the sales and the leads, all you need to pour is a little gasoline on that fire, which means marketing, to then drive people to your website so they're not fishing in the sea with the competitors. And then you're driving people to your own website, just like what we all try to do. And then the last thing I asked was, how are you tackling incoming leads? Like, how are you tracking? How are you quantifying them? And so the thing that scared me the most was piece of paper. And so that scared me, and that ranked number 2. So I'm doing rank number 2 first, because that just surprised me. We can't do that anymore. There's way too many good CRMs out there. Casey uses Salesforce, if I'm okay to say that, and then there's other ones like Hey Arrow that's just come on the market, that's just been taking market share like crazy because the usability of it, and so then and you have Handle as well for deer dealers, but piece of paper ranked number 2 on how you're tracking incoming leads, and that scares me. But it also brings a ton of opportunities. Like, I want to take that slice of those dealers, and I want to work for those dealers to really show them how I can move the needle by just holding accountability, tracking them, email marketing, dynamic advertising. So like you said, if somebody's searching for a combine, only show them combines and display ads, or Facebook dynamic advertising instead of showing like a little lawnmower when they're searching for combines, And so it's that dynamic stuff that we really started doing, and we're really started to do a lot of used equipment marketing. But I found that interesting, but you have to have a CRM at the end of the day. Now, last one was, how are you accomplishing the need for inventory to sell? And this is actually one I think you wanted to add in here, because we just need to find out. But trade-ins was number 1 by far. I mean, by far. Dealer transfer was number 3. And then campaign for like we buy was number 2. So trade-ins and we buy are kind of somewhat together, right? Because you want them to come in for you to purchase that piece of equipment, but you're not going to turn them away if you can sell them something. So those two things are kind of tied together. And the dealer transfer was so low, which isn't really surprising, because why are you going to give up a good piece of equipment if you can sell it? So that wasn't really surprising at all at that point. And then I just had to ask, because we did have new equipment people in there as well. Is there a common theme for pieces of equipment you're selling? Attachments was an option, but attachments wasn't queued in, so it got 0. Large ag was 100%, and small ag was 50%. So I found that interesting as well.
Yeah.
So what is your feedback? What do you think when you hear all that data, Casey, and you're an expert that I really value? I mean, what do you think on that stuff?
Well, I think on the website side of it, everyone has a website, and people engage their website at varying degrees. So some people have their stuff. They have the third party sites more updated than they have their actual websites updated. Right, that's one thing. I don't remember what slide it was that you had in there, but there was the one in there that was where you generated most of your leads from, and your websites were half of it, and the third party one was the biggest one, and the walk-ins one was the last. The majority of the people, that one there, the majority of the people that are even inside of your area of responsibility may not be looking at your website. They might be looking at the tractor house, the machinery repeat, the fast line, or whatever it is, to see what you have in inventory before they go to your website. So as an industry, there has to be a better way for us to get our websites the way they are, and to grow that website presence and driving that stuff there. I'm guilty of it. I go out to all these third-party websites to look and see what's out there before I go and look and see what's at my neighboring dealerships on their websites. I just narrow it down to a geographical area and take a look at what's there. And so to me, I think it's just we're turning that corner. It's just, and I think 2020, obviously in 2021 has accelerated that corner that we're turning, and websites and web presence are going to be a bigger push at dealerships in 2022 than I think there's ever been. Because I think just the data is all there that shows that, like the car business, the guy showing up to the lot ready to buy something has done his research or her research. They've done it all. They know within, 90% of what they're going to buy when they get there, and they've got it narrowed down to this option and that option, and then they're ready to move forward. And they get there, they just want to see it first to make sure it's exactly what they think it is, and then they're gonna pull triggers. But like the Carvanas of the world, you're buying that 100% online. You're not even looking at it. You're just showing up. It's some guy drops it off at your house, and away you go. And I really think that the ag equipment world is not that far from that whole Carvana approach. And when that happens, that is you talk about disruptors, and I know how much you like disruptors and those kind of things. That's going to be a huge disruptor in the way we look at business and the way we do things. I mean, you have a combine in a row crop tractor vending machine somewhere in downtown Phoenix or wherever, or middle of nowhere, Nebraska or someplace like that. And it's just, stuff is just it just shows up, and you like it or you don't. And if you don't, you take it back, and you get you a different one. And that's coming. And I think we need to figure that out.
Oh, I do. I do think so. If I had billions of dollars, which I don't, I would start the Carvana of used equipment. I think the opportunity is definitely out there because of how people are searching. But let me go back to what you said on content. Think about, 80s, 90s, early 2000s when all of our advertising was in print, basically. Right. And my mom owned a dealership, and content's still king. So for example, in those print advertising, when you would place an ad in there, you would make sure you had a picture and you had the correct information inside of that, because you knew that by saying no image, no details, but call, no one's going to call. Right. And so you already knew that with print. But for some reason, when we navigated into the early 2010s for internet, it was like, just get it up there really, really fast. But now it's coming to, okay, let's get it up fast, but let's get it up there right, with the right content, the right photos, the right spray wash the thing before you take a photo. Make sure the details are in there. Like, now we're finally starting to recognize, oh wait, it was just like back in the day, but now we just apply it on this thing called the website. So right. It's been interesting, and doing video walkarounds. I mean, we have some dealers where we beg to do video walkarounds, and now they are, and they're like, oh my gosh, our conversion rate just tripled. And I'm like, yeah, because they want to research it.
Right. Yeah, I think the video side of this business is what that's going to be a huge differentiator between your web presence, right? I mean, I think the more things you can do on the YouTubes of the world and those kind of things, and also link that back to that piece of equipment. Just as simple as starting the machine up, do a figure eight out in the parking lot and come back and park it, 15-20 second video. It doesn't have to be a 5-minute video of it out in the field doing whatever it's doing. It just has to see the smoke come out of the stack and that the wheels turn. And it didn't blow up on you when you got it down the road. I mean, it's real simple stuff like that goes a long, long ways. Other things I've seen people do that I think is very like the walk around, where guys talking about a piece of equipment. This is a 2000 whatever, and it's got this many hours on it. And, the local guy owned it, and he was really particular about blah, 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 blah. He tells the whole story behind the machine and really dives into the details of what's going on there. And those guys and those machines like that, when you can do that, those machines sell pretty quick because, again, you're building that trust with the customer. And then when they show up and actually see what it is, yep, it's exactly like you're telling me it was. And I want to have this machine. And I think that story behind the story is what people are kind of looking for, especially, I'm in Iowa and I'm going to spend $300,000 on something before I come all the way out from Iowa, or just trust you to drop it off.
Oh yeah.
I need to make sure that it's what you say it's going to be.
Well, just think of it this way too. And we preach all the time about content, video, pictures. A lot of people say, but resources. But I want people to then put themselves in front of how they shop for, what you and I were talking about, like a Peloton or the perfect piece of equipment that you need to make yourself a new you or whatever. You're going to do that research before you make that big purchase. And so if you just put yourself in the mindset of that individual with your mindset of how you research things before you purchase, because we all do it, then you start seeing the dotted line. Sometimes we're always just a little too close to our business to see it. But when you step back and you look at, oh my gosh, I do this with small products, or maybe it's over a certain price point, you start going more in depth. Well, if we're trying to sell a combine for 6 figures, my God, I hope they're doing their research.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. And they need to understand what it is that's going on out there. So, million moving parts, man. A lot of things going that direction. Last thought here, 2022. If you give one piece of advice coming out of 21, one piece of advice to people listening to this right now, what would that be as far as their digital content goes? 1,
do not be afraid to market aftermarket. So parts and service. We saw that as a huge climb up and huge return. That's number 1. And I know this is all about equipment, but I'm telling you, that's where your margins are too. You got to do it. If you don't have inventory, you got to have those margins. Don't be afraid to do that with your first party data. 2 is don't be afraid to advertise used equipment that's on your site instead of spending all your money on the third party sites. Try to do something like our used equipment package where we do the dynamic stuff. When we get those signals, like Casey was saying, if one person is only looking at combines, then let's dynamically serve them video creative that is dynamic and shows the combines that they just looked at on your website or other sites. And then we match it, we'll do lookalikes, and that's dynamic creative video, and then dynamic ads, etc. to do that as well. And then number 3, if you're listening, you're like, okay, but what about new equipment? I'm so scared about the new equipment side. Is, man, all the data we've collected and everything, the pre-ordering works and the heavy call to action works, where you say only 3 left at this location, only 2 left at this location. Yeah, you're going to run out faster. But if you need market share in a month to take a big jump, do it, because it works. So those are my 3 pieces of advice, sir.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. So if folks want to get more of that advice from you, Tim, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you and your team at SI?
Just go to SIEQ.com, and that is going to direct you everywhere. I mean, you're going to see all of our data sets for used equipment, all of that stuff. And then, of course, our phone numbers, personal cell phones, everything are on the website, because, that's how we do business in the agri world, right? You got to have those connections. And so all of those cell phones are on there, but SIEQ.com is where to get it, buddy.
Right on, man. Well, Tim, appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram For all the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast, also go to MovingIronLLC.com for everything Moving Iron related. So with that, I am Casey Seymour with Tim Whitley. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley has over 33 years in the trucking business, moving ag and construction equipment across the country. For more information, go to valleytransinc.com or give Parker a call at 800-657-4910. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here.